Good Shepherd Sermon for Sunday, June 24th, 2018. Pastor Paul Tolbert. Good Shepherd Lutheran Church and School is located in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, in the United States. Our mission is simple and bold. We seek to grow in faith and knowledge of our Savior Jesus. We want to make Him known to others so that they too may share the joys that Jesus has won for them. Here's Pastor.
There are a couple of chapters where Jesus relates all kinds of parables to the people who were following Him and listening to Him. In recent weeks, our gospel lessons traditionally have focused on some of those lessons. I know last week, Pastor Tolberg talked about how you put a seed in the ground and it grows, and it was an example of how the church itself grows. A beautiful reminder to us. He spoke in parables. What's a parable? You got a definition for me? You can talk now. Earthly story with a heavenly meaning. Yeah, you went to the same grade school I did, I think. Okay. Earthly story with a heavenly meaning. It had all kinds of things to teach us. Perfect illustrations, figures of speech. He used them constantly in His preaching and teaching. He let people know what they needed to know, but they needed to be spiritually discerned. And so He would often have to explain to His disciples exactly what those stories meant. Now He's done for a while, and now He has a particular lesson for His disciples. That day when evening came, Jesus said to His disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took Him along, just as He was in the boat. There were also other boats with Him. I want to pause there for just a second, because nothing else is said about these other boats. We can assume that they had some of the same difficulties, but we also can assume that they were blessed in the same way when Jesus came to the rescue regarding this storm. A furious squall came up. That's a bad storm for those of you who don't go in boats very often. And the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. You have to understand that a number of Jesus' disciples were fishermen. They were used to being out there on the water. They knew what it was like to face storms, to face high waters, to face waves. And they knew how to protect themselves and their boats. But they were worried. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. What? The waves were bad enough that the boat was almost swamped with water. And Jesus is calmly sleeping in the back of the boat. Clearly, the boat was going like this. And by the way, you know those big cruise ships that we have today? That's not the kind of boat this was. Okay, this was a little dinghy almost compared to those things. He had to be bounced up and down. The water undoubtedly was drenching him every couple seconds. And he's sound asleep. Not because he was a sound sleeper, but because he was going to teach his disciples a lesson. And so he's still asleep. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drowned?" Now, there's a perfect question, right? We're having bad stuff happen in our life. Don't you care if we drown? Jesus, don't you care that I've got cancer? Jesus, don't you care that my mother is sick? Don't you care that my marriage is in shambles? My job is bad. My finances are wrecked. Don't you care? Don't you love me? It looks like you don't care about me at all, Jesus. And why is that? Because, we like to treat Jesus like a fire engine, don't we? we don't communicate with them too much until something bad happens in our lives. Then we get down on our knees and fold our hands and ask God for strength and blessing and forgiveness and for healing. And we expect him to come running like a 911 fire truck, right? And when he doesn't, the devil comes to you and to me, just like he did to the disciples. And he says, yeah, Jesus doesn't care about you. He doesn't love you. Yes, he knows what's going on in your life, but he's doing nothing to help you. Why? Because he doesn't care about you. Don't you care that we are about to drown? The disciples asked. Don't you care that I am suffering? We ask. He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. I used to live close to the Lake Michigan. And when you went out there, it might have been windy yesterday, but it wasn't windy today. Didn't matter. The waves were still coming from yesterday. You could have the wind die down to a calm, and the waves would still be flowing and high for a long, long time. But not in this case. Jesus not only stilled the winds, he stilled the waves. He did it all. It was a danger to them. Jesus fixed. Jesus fixed it. Power, unbelievable power. So much so that he said to the disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? We'll come back to that. They were terrified and asked each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obeyed him. You see, they had already seen Jesus do miracles. They had heard his preaching. They had heard him talk about love. They heard him talk about how he loved his people and cared about them. And they lived with Jesus. They saw him day after day after day and experienced the love that only Jesus could provide. Jesus has to ask them, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? We listen to Jesus' blessings. We hear his comfort. We open the pages of scriptures and we see his power and his majesty and his might. And we say, Lord, don't you care? Do we have faith? Do we trust in Jesus? Oh, we have every reason not to trust in Jesus, don't we? We live in a world of sin that surrounds us, and we ourselves are sinners. We surely don't deserve God's blessings and love. We've done nothing to earn it. We sin not only by living as sinners, but we do sinful things every day of our lives. You know, I like to use this example of Family Feud. I've seen this question asked a couple of different times in some of the ending quick things at the end of the show. And the question is, how many of the 10 commandments have you broken in the last month? In both cases, a person answered 3, and the moderator said, oh boy, you're really bad, aren't you? And then the answer from the audiences that they had asked, the number one answer is 1. Now, the only way you can think you have only broken one of the 10 commandments in the last month is to totally misunderstand the 10 commandments. We've broken them on our way to church today. When we were mad at our wife or our kids for not getting ready fast enough, for not leaving enough hot water for my shower in the morning. Driving to church, you were mad at that guy who turned left in front of you, or that other car that was ahead of you that was apparently practicing for some kind of a parade or something, you know. Somebody was sitting in your pew. I don't know what. I can tell you this. I'm certainly guilty of it. I've been guilty of anger and so forth this morning. I've said things to my wife I should never say. Stuff happens in our lives because we're sinners. And it happens all the time. And our hope, our comfort, lies in the Savior who could calm the storm, but more importantly, takes away the results of sin. He dies for you and for me on the cross. And now, no matter what difficulties we face in life, no matter what rocks fall on our heads, Jesus has us by the hand. And he says, I am there for you. I will never leave you alone. I died for you on the cross. And I live with you every day. That is our comfort. That is our strength. Jesus, do you really love me? Look to the cross. And there you find your answer. We'll now join in our song of victory.